video will help you with problems from 8.7's homework. So if we take a look at the first example, the number y of hours of cello lessons that you take after x weeks is represented by the equation y equals 3x. Graph the equation below. Don't forget to label the x and the y axis appropriately. So if we reread the problem, it says the number y of hours, so we know that the y-axis is the number of hours, and x is the number of weeks. And the equation we need to graph is y equals 3x. So we know that there is a y-intercept of 0 here because there is no number, so we're going to start at the origin. And our slope is 3, so it's positive, so we're going to go up 1 and always to the right, and there's no number in our denominator, so we can put a 1 because 3 divided by 1 is still 3. So we're going to rise 3 and run 1. Rise 3, right 1. We're going to make our graph. Okay, it would not make sense to put an arrow going down because you can't have negative hours or negative weeks. But it would make sense to put an arrow going up because as the weeks go on, the number of hours will continue to increase. So I went up 3, so each of these is worth 1. It's going up by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this shows, this graph shows 8 hours, and then we have the weeks here, so 8. Okay, then it says explain why only quadrant 1 is being used to graph. So everything's positive in quadrant 1. So only quadrant 1 is being used because you cannot have negative weeks or hours. Then we're asked to interpret the slope. So the slope we know is the number in front of x, which is 3. So I like to label this rise over run. So the rise goes with the y-axis and the run is the x. So if we look at our y-axis, it's the number of hours. So this is saying 3 hours per x is the weeks. So when we interpret the slope, we're going to label it, and it would be 3 hours of cello lessons per week. So the slope represents the number of hours of cello lessons per week. Okay, then we're asked to interpret the y-intercept. So we know that the y-intercept by now is the point on the graph where it crosses the y-axis, which is 0, 0. So when x is 0, y is 0. So when x, the number of weeks, is 0, the number of hours of cello lessons is 0. So the y-intercept represents the initial point on the graph when there is 0 weeks of cello lessons. The hours are 0. Okay, then we're asked if the number of hours was 18, so the number of hours, that is the y value, was 18, how many weeks, and the weeks are X, of lessons were taken. So we're going to take our equation, y equals 3x, and it says if the number of hours was 18, so if the y is 18, we want to know how many weeks of lessons there were. So if we solve this equation for x, we would get 6 for x. So if there were 18 hours of cello lessons, we would be in week 6. Take 6 weeks to have 18 hours of cello lessons. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and skip over now that we've had an example. Number 1 and number 6 are pretty similar types of graphs, so let's go ahead and take a look at number 9 on the back. So it says the position y in meters of a submarine after x minutes is y equals negative 2x minus 4. So y is the position of the submarine. And the x represents the number of minutes. Question 10 says, explain why only quadrant 4 is being used to graph. So only quadrant 4 is being used because. So we have a submarine, and so its positions in meters, and the submarine is going down because the slope is negative, and if we look at the y-intercept is negative. So that means the submarine is already under sea level. It's already in the water. So the reason why we're in the quadrant 4 is because minutes are positive and the submarine is below sea level. So when we graph it, our y-intercept is negative 4, so we're going to start, this is the origin, we're going to start at 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to start at negative 4. And our slope is negative 2. So since the slope is negative, we're going to go down and always to the right, and since it has no denominator, 1. So from here, we're going to go down 2 and to the right 1. Down 2 and to the right 1. Down 2 and to the right 1. And on our graph here, we're going to put an arrow going down because it doesn't say like how deep the submarine can go. So for all we know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. For all we know, maybe it's below 10 meters under the sea level. But we're not going to put an arrow going up because then the minutes, it means over here that the x is negative and you can't have negative minutes. So if we interpret the slope is negative 2. So that's the rise over the run. So negative means it's the position of the submarine is going down. And if we look at the y here, the y value is the position. And the x value is the minutes. And I got to label my minutes here. I went up by 1. This is 10, and the minutes are going up by 1 to get to 10. So to interpret the slope, I would say the slope represents the position of the submarine decreases because it's negative I should label that this is meters, 2 meters per minute. So every minute the submarine is going to go down 2 meters. Okay, then we're asked to interpret the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis, so right here. It crosses at 0, -4. So I need to explain what 0, -4 represents. So this is x and this is y. So when x is 0, so when the number of minutes is 0, the submarine is at -4 meters. So it's below the sea level 4 meters. So the y-intercept represents the initial, that means the start, the initial position of the submarine is 4 meters below sea level. So that means before the submarine decreases 2 meters per minute, before that rate of decrease happens, the submarine is already below the sea 4 meters before this constant rate of change is happening. Okay, then we're asked in 5 minutes, so minutes is the x, the time is x. What is the position of the submarine? So the position of the submarine is y. So we're going to take the equation, y equals -2x minus 4, and we want to know in 5 minutes, so that's x, where the submarine will be, which is y. So we're going to solve this equation. And we get that the position of the submarine is -14. So that -14 represents 14 feet below sea level. Okay, let's take a look at the last example for this graph. It says, after how many minutes will the submarine be 21 feet below sea level? So after how many minutes, the minutes are the x, will the submarine be 21 feet below sea level? So 21 feet below sea level is the position, that's y. So we're going to take our equation and do a substitution here. So after how many minutes, so we don't know what x is, but we know the position is 21 feet below. So below means it's at -21. And then we solve our equation. Negative divided by negative, perfect, it's positive, you can only have positive minutes. And 2 goes into 17 at most 8 times, so 8.5. So in about 8.5 minutes, the submarine will be 21 feet below sea level. And then we're going to take a look at this last problem here, numbers 15 and 16. It says the graph below shows the relationship between temperature, y, and degrees. So we got temperature for the y-axis and altitude, so height, in thousands of feet. Find the slope, show work. So we're not given an equation, so we can't look in front of the x to determine the slope. But from what we're given a graph. So we could do rise or run, or I see that they have given us 2 points. So we've learned how to find the slope if we're given 2 points. So they gave us 2 points, and I'm going to use the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Or we talked about it could also be y1 minus y2. So in other words, if you remember, this formula here just says subtract the y values and subtract the x values. So we have 75 minus 40, which is 35. And 0 minus 7 is negative 7. And we divide that and we get negative 5. So it says interpret the slope. So negative 5. So the slope, rise over run. The slope that we got was negative 5. So it does not have a denominator, so we're going to put that 1 there. And then we're going to do rise is the y's and run is the x. So if we look at the y-axis, it's temperature. So degrees Fahrenheit. And the x is the altitude. So, and it says 1,000 feet. That's what the label is. So to interpret this, we're going to say that the slope represents, it's negative, so this graph is showing temperature when the altitude, with different altitudes. So we would say that the slope represents the temperature decreases 5 degrees Fahrenheit every, or per, you could either use the word every or per 1,000 feet. So for every 1,000 feet.